Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Nueva York.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor,
¿Pero qué es esto?
solo tienes que vivir
Y este frío.
un verano en Nueva York.
Un ratito nada más. Ey, ey, ey. 4 de julio, verde y July. Ando con mi prima borracha Rulay. Los míos en el Bronx, saben la que hay. Con la nota en hoy, por Washington hoy. Willy Colón me dicen el malo. Ey, porque pasan los años y sigo dando palos. Vendiendo discos como cuadro Frida Kahlo. El perico es blanco, sí, sí, el tusi racista. No te confundas, no, no, mejor evita. Ey, un chat de cañita en casa de Toñita. Y PR se siente cerquita, sí, sí, sí. En el campeonato nadie me lo quita.
Cerveza nuevo, number one de cerveza nuevo, ¿ok? Puerto Rico.
Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaeton y dembow, ey, con reggaeton y dembow, sí, con reggaeton y dembow. Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaeton y dembow. Me siento como el lápiz en tope del dough. Cuando yo nací fue que nació el flow de low a low. Ping pong, flow pesado, Big Pong, con silenciador le robamos las gotas. J-Bone, ey, yo estoy en la mía, no tengo adversario, no. Con los Yankees los me aguanzato, a correr que otra vez la sacamos al estadio.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir
Ya mismo nos vamos.
un verano en Nueva York.
Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover.
What up? What up? How you doing, Hosey? I can't hear you, bro.
Oh,
Can you hear me? There you go. See, you're busting my chops for not having your stuff together, and now you're the one who's not having your stuff together.
Oh, come on, man. Come on.
Hey, every time I watch that video, it makes me smile, man. It's so cool.
Yeah,
So how are you, man?
good.
Yeah.
Have an event today.
How'd that go?
We're gonna have one right after this. So basically, we're gonna be talking about. Remember that puzzle that I'm a fan of?
You love that
Well,
puzzle.
Well, what I made a commitment the last time is that we're gonna break down each one of those to
Mhm.
give them additional ways of handling it. So last time we did the motivation. This week we're doing the timing, basically. So we
Okay.
created a document for them and broke down the timing, how to build urgency on the timing, how to reverse engineer their timing, how to assumptively incorrectly tell them like almost like tell them like, hey, so you're probably not going to do something for the next year, right, Aaron? Or you're probably like, based on what you're telling me, you're probably not going to do something in the next month or so, right? Like, oh no, I'm probably like 3 months out. So basically different ways of asking for timing. So I'm basically breaking down the motivation, timing. Then I'm going to break down price and every single one of them, how to basically dig deeper in multiple different ways on each one of those pieces of the puzzle. And
Yeah, I
what
love
we're
that.
gonna
I
jump
did.
into today.
That's awesome, man. I did an event this week where we did the same thing, kind of clearing the room by room.
Yeah.
So as far as time is concerned, I imagine that could be helpful or useful to people as we are clearing the room. I asked everybody, I'm like, why is time important?
It's funny. I'm asking the same exact question at the very beginning.
Yeah, like, why is time important? And they all look at me like, I'm like, well, how does time In terms of like leads, my experience is that it's the really okay leads that hide the really good ones.
Mhm.
And even though in your marketplace you've seen a substantial drop in volume, based on data, you personally haven't, but like the marketplace has about 50% less transactions, but you're on track to do the same, if not more. Last year you did the same as you did the year previous. This year on track to do a bit more. The question is, how is that possible? And I believe that part of the reason it's possible, amongst other things, lead sources and, pivoting and changing with the marketplace, but also it's getting really, really good at assessing time.
100%.
And is this individual within a 30 to 45 day time frame of, let's say, putting a property on the market for sale? And that will dictate whether or not they get your undivided attention or not. We were on that role play that we do, that Zoom, and you were like, this guy presented and he role played, and immediately you were like, yeah, dude, you're probably going to do a lot of homework for free. And he was like, huh? And then me and you systematically started to go through like why he should be paying attention to time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so the way he had set it up, he wanted the appointment versus, okay, is there something here or not? Here's the other question that I'm going to ask at the very beginning as it relates to time. I'm going to say, okay, like how often should you follow up with somebody? Should you follow up with them every week? Should we follow up with them every month? Should we follow up with them every 3 months, every 6 months, every year? What's the right answer? Because I find that I get that a lot from people. Like, oh, should I be following up with people like every week or every month? And what I often find is that it's basically you're trying to create a process that's the same for everybody. Instead, what I try to do is I try to have conversations with other human beings. I get to know what they're looking for. And then based on that conversation, I determine when the next phone call is. Like, so for example, if somebody tells me, hey, look, I'm going to be at a seminar tomorrow, call me on Thursday. I'm not going to call them tomorrow, even if my follow-up system says to call them every day because they're hot. You know, so a lot of it depends on just how, were you able to uncover during that conversation, basically?
Yeah. And immediately when I hear that, when you're like, which is a fantastic question, and it's tied to time, how often should I follow up? That's predicated upon how motivated they are
100%.
and the time frame that they've let me know that they were considering doing business, right? So if somebody's very, very motivated, what's that noise, bro?
They're doing construction at my house.
Jeez Louise. I'm like, what is this guy doing, dude? So
we're installing cement on the left side. I'm like, man, I'm gonna mute myself when you're talking.
Yeah, dude, it's wild over there. So if somebody's like at an 8, 9, or a 10, and the time frame in which they're going to put a property back on the market is like, or put it on the market was in the next 7 to 10 days, I'm going to follow up with them 3 times a day until I get them on the phone, right? Versus if they say to you, hey, we're like 5 months out, and then you dig a little bit to try to determine if that's based on a condition or an objection, right? And if I'm clear that it's a condition, it's not something that we can do anything about. Like I need to wait till my kid graduates, or I need to wait till I, retire. Then that's going to dictate a different type of lead follow-up.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things too that people struggle with is helping people get clarity on their own time frames, and then helping people move up that time frame as well too. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about is if questions. So for example, if there was a financial benefit to getting it on the market now versus waiting until summer, is that something that you would be open to? If you could sell the property in as-is condition without having to fix it up, is that something that you would be open to? So a lot of it has to do with like, okay, like there's so many different ways to ask for time just on different situations. And what I'm finding out is that most agents only have one way of asking for the time frame. And if they the time frame. They have no other way of asking for it. Therefore, they reached a block wall that they can't do it. So
Yeah. And it's extremely limiting.
yeah. So
Right. It's like you end up like where you end up speaking to, and I know this has happened to you and it's happened to me, you know, numerous times where two people can speak to the same person and end up with a completely different outcome. And they look at you and they're like, wow, that was magic. It's like, no, not really. I just kept digging where it's like, well, you know, ideally in terms of what you want, how soon would you like to have the home on the market for sale? And they're like 6 months from now. And like, okay. And they just move on. And there's no additional questions.
Instead of digging deeper on that, you know?
Right. Like, so, and then just so I'm clear in terms of 6 months, is that because you're waiting for something to happen? Were you thinking maybe that time frame was better to get on the market? Like, if you don't mind me asking, what's behind the decision to wait for 6 months?
Or hey, look, what's the benefit, Aaron, of waiting 6 months to sell the property versus doing it now while the market is so red hot?
That's right. And if you knew that there was a financial, that if question, because if creates possibility. So if you knew, and I don't know if you'd be open to this, that there was a distinct financial benefit for you to be on the market sooner rather than later, would you want to take advantage of that and therefore move your timeline up? Or are you committed to 6 months from now and then be quiet?
And whatever they say is okay. Your job is just to ask the question to find out. So I put a note on there. I said, I don't care when they sell, Aaron. I just care that when they sell, I am there in front of them and they select me to help them.
And I think that the really kind of, because behind behaviors are beliefs. So there's results, behaviors, and beliefs. And that what you just said is a belief. And I think most people believe that their job is to make people motivated. It is not.
No, zero.
I mean, what I'm aware of is me and you are pretty solid salespeople. And I know for sure that people don't do what I want them to do. They do what they want to do and what they self-discover. So my job, instead of trying to make motivation, instead is to dig and ask questions to discover motivation and therefore discover timeframes. Once I clear that motivation room, we go into the time room and get really clear on where they're at. And then based on that and decision makers and how everybody else feels, now I can come up with a potential option or solution, whether that's 6 months from now, if that makes sense to do it, or if it's tomorrow, if it makes sense to do it then.
Yeah. It's interesting because even like getting clarity, sometimes people will say things that are very vague, be like, oh yeah, I'm going to sell in the summer.
Yeah.
Dude, the summer is a long time, meaning that's a big window, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
and
so,
instead of just being like, okay, great. Well, if you don't mind me asking, when you say summer, did you mean June? Did you mean July? Did you mean August? Like, what were you thinking?
You know, it's funny. When I started off, I basically didn't know when the season started. So I printed out like, okay, what months are the summer? What months are the spring? What months are the winter? And then I would have that in front of me. So when somebody would say summer, I'd look to the left. I'd be like, okay, so are you thinking like closer to June, July, or are you thinking like August, September? Oh no, we're thinking like closer to September. Why is that important? Because now it starts to tell you when to follow up.
That's right.
Now you can dig deeper. You can be like, okay, like what's important about waiting until summer versus doing it now while the inventory is red hot?
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't mind me asking, and my intention asking isn't to be nosy, just to see if I could give you any more information that could be helpful or useful. Was there any particular benefit to you personally in waiting till September versus now when the market's white hot and then quiet? So that little bridge, like if you don't mind me, because I think a lot of things, the reason why I jumped in there, Jose, I think a lot of times agents, well, here's what I noticed. We did this thing in our group call that we do for all the agents. And this idea that what's behind, again, there's results, there's behaviors, and then there's beliefs. And what most people, they focus on trying to change behaviors. The problem is that if you don't change the beliefs behind it, the behaviors will never stick. And I did this very interesting exercise. All these people are salespeople, and I promise this will circle back as to why I brought this up. All of these, they're salespeople, yes? And our industry comes up with all of these creative, euphemistic, silly names to run away from the fact that we're salespeople. We'll call ourselves realtors, which is like not a real word, or we'll call ourselves like real estate consultants, or we'll call ourselves like the purveyor of the American dream, like all of these nonsensical, ridiculous words to run away from the fact that we're salespeople. And I think Not I think, I know that most people's sales potential is completely limited by their beliefs around sales. So I asked them the following questions. Number one, you ready? On a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being I strongly disagree, 10 being I strongly agree. 5 is neutral. Here's the question I asked them. I believe that salespeople help me to make a better buying decision. Scale from 1 to 10. 1,
Write it down. Write it down.
10, I strongly agree. 5 is I'm neutral. Next question, ready? I believe that salespeople make the world a better place. 1 to 10. Next one. I believe in what I'm selling so much that I sell it as hard and aggressive as I can. Scale from 1 to 10. So you know what's so fascinating, Jose? 95% of all of these people on the calls have these conflicting beliefs around sales, and they wonder why they're not able to
sell.
It's wild. So why do I bring that up? A lot of people believe that asking these questions, what we call digging, their belief is that it's disagreeable, that you're being nosy, that it's that like it's pesky, it's all negative connotations. Because as younger people, we picked up, we got pushed out onto the planet and we get bombarded with experiences, and from these experiences we deduce meaning. Whether that is, and then we get attached in the sense that like beliefs are just opinions that we've developed loyalty to over time. So somebody tells you, your little kid, when you ask for stuff like, hey, you're being nosy, knock it off. And then like that sticks. And then you're a grown up who can read the scripts that we provide. But then when the rubber meets the road, it's time to ask the question. They don't, and they don't know why, but it's because of the belief behind it.
Which is amazing, wild, like that, right? Even. But I think too, like that exercise alone will help people realize that a lot of it is, and I had like, when I was starting off, I had all these like different beliefs that I had to change in order to basically get to where I'm at now. Like there was
and how much of the time that we spent together initially, one was role playing, but most of it as well, it's in conjunction. It was both. It was me. It was beliefs, bro. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm just looking up the rest of those questions because I wrote them down for our group call, because there were 2 more and I forgot what they were. But
it's okay. It starts to happen, bro, as you get older, like.
So you ready? So I got the first 3. You ready? But here's the first one is salespeople are looking to help me to make the best decisions in buying situations. Number 2, I think salespeople are a key part of making the world a better place. Number 3, I love my product and business or service so much that I sell it as strongly as I can. Right? Number 4, I know exactly who needs my product and why it helps them. And then number 5, I keep a pulse on the latest techniques, marketing strategies, and apply them so I can attract and convert more people. Now, we could sit in a room, Jose, of agents that are salespeople, even though they call themselves all these different names. Ask them what are their beliefs behind asking questions, digging, what we call digging around time and motivation and decision makers. And they have these internal conflicts.
Yeah.
Well, where like, yeah, go ahead.
Not only that, but like the majority of the people will avoid, like, it's almost like they'd rather not know than to ask. It's underrated how asking questions will actually, I get a phone call yesterday, bro, and it's so funny. The guy goes, hey, my landlord wants to sell me the house. I'm like, okay, what did you do? He's like, well, I told him I'd offer him $500K and that I would give him $100K down. And I told him, did you ever think about, instead of offering him something, just asking him what he wants instead? Yeah. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what did he say after you told him that? He said, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. I'm like, instead. So I jumped on a call with him and I said, okay, like, hey, I'm such and such friend. He told me that you're interested in selling the property. How much would you like to offer the property?
Oh, you called the seller?
I called the seller basically for him. Mm-hmm. And basically he goes, well, I like to sell it for about $800,000. Then the next question I said, is there any special pricing for Rogelio since he's your tenant and he's been a good tenant for a long time? He's like, well, I was thinking about giving him a 5 to 10% discount on that. So I'm like, okay, so that would put us like 720 to 760. I said, okay, great. How much would you want as the down payment? He goes, well, I was thinking somewhere between 3 and 5%. So that's like 30 to 70,000. So it's not 100,000. I said, how long were you wanting to finance the home for? He goes, not more than 10 years. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what type of interest rate would you want on the property, or what would you want the monthly payment to be on the property? So instead of like saying like, and it's so funny because a different seller called me, he's like, I'm just going to offer them this. I'm like, instead of making the offer, just ask them what they want. And then at that point, you can determine if it makes sense for you or not. Because what's going to happen a lot of times is if you just throw out something blank, they're going to be like, oh, this guy's not serious. And then they're not going to give you the opportunity because you put your foot in your mouth. And who knows? What if you want to offer them 500? And what if they want 300 for it?
Yeah. And that reminds me of like what Pay said during that lunch. He's like, what do you have and what do you need? So, hey, and again, like, but I think a lot of people who get into this profession aren't really clear on what it actually is.
Yeah.
And they're not really clear that they're carrying around all of this belief baggage that's actually inhibiting their ability to help more people. Where I remember, like, as we were talking, you had a belief a long time ago that if a home didn't sell at a certain price, that was a reflection of you and your character and you did something wrong. And I remember we were role playing and I like swiftly corrected that belief. And I was like, hey, bro, do you get to dictate price? And you were like, no. I'm like, who does? And you're like, well, I guess buyers and sellers agree. I'm like, oh, I see. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're taking personal responsibility for something that you don't have control over. Is that right? And you were like, huh. I'm like, yeah. So if they really are like, you're just a messenger. I'm just relaying information.
Yeah.
And if the seller really wants to get mad, they should open up the door and yell at all of the buyers and sellers in their neighborhood that have been agreeing at certain prices, because that's what dictates the market, not you. But that change in belief allowed you now to show up differently on price reduction calls instead of being afraid. And then I also shared with you that my belief is to see something and to not tell them is malpractice. Like if you went to the doctor and the doctor saw something and they didn't tell you, you would sue them. So it's your job to relay that information. And once that belief changed, and look at how important this is. You went from having a really hard time speaking to them, like it would create a lot of internal tension, like all this other stuff, to being able to speak to them and then getting price adjustments and then they sell their home.
And then the other thing that was big on there too was the belief around, instead of thinking about it from a dollar amount, thinking about it from like a percentage standpoint.
That's right.
Meaning like, instead of being like, because I see a lot of sellers that do these baby price reductions, like 5,000 or 2,000 or $3,000 or something like that. And a lot of times, like when you're missing the mark, you're not depending on the price point. Like if you're talking about a $50,000 home, $3,000 is 6%, you know. But if you're talking about $1 million property, $3,000 is like less than a third of a percentage point, you know. So
right.
That helped me understand it relatively as well too. Where
I gave you that frame of like, hey, if you're getting this amount of showings, and no offers, you're probably off by 5 to 7. And if you're getting this amount, you're probably off by 10.
Yep. And that alone, I remember a listing specifically in Fillmore where we were getting no showings at all, and I reduce it 10%. All of a sudden, we get 3 offers on the property.
Mm-hmm.
One price reduction, and that did it. Versus, and the seller was like, "Hey, can we do 10?" I'm like, "Look, it's not going to make a difference, you know, just based on being able to read the market in that capacity."
Well, that, and because of that belief, when they would come back and say like, "Well, can't we just do it a little bit less?" It's like, sure, I want to be clear. You're the boss. My job's to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Can I share with you what would concern me for you and your family if you chose that approach? Well, sure. And then I can go into having that conversation and pushing back. But the reason why I'm able to do that and do it consistently is because what's behind it is the belief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's what's so interesting, is that like this idea, like you're going to be with all these agents and you'll be teaching them how to dig for time.
But a lot of it is belief based. And I think that's where I think the training that you and I both provide, I think is helpful. I'm very like technical, like, hey, like if they say this, say that, and you are as well too. But I think what you have as well too is the belief aspect where you can help people like get rid of certain beliefs, and that'll actually help them in some cases even more than basically like even knowing what to say and how to say it basically.
Yeah. So, and it's just and I appreciate that. I think it's because that happened on that role play where he showed up, and then I wouldn't let him go away from it. I'm like, what's the belief underneath? Right. And then just keep boxing in, and then it ends up coming to the surface. But it's not until it is a combination of both. I need to equip myself, with that particular skill of specialized knowledge for what to say and how to say it. But I also need to address the belief. So another one was like, how many people believe that asking for what you want has a negative connotation? Raise your hand. Scale from 1 to 10. Asking for what you want is bad, naughty, not nice, shouldn't do it, disagreeable. And if people are honest with themselves, so think about this, they can listen to our handlers on how to close when somebody says, hey, I'm going to think about it. Yeah. And we give them very clearly, and they could write it out every day. If they have an underlying belief that asking is pushy, it's not nice, it's disagreeable, they won't
None
be
of
able
that
to
will matter basically.
It won't matter. If I have a belief that something's wrong, like, if it doesn't sell, it's a reflection of me as a salesperson and like my character and stuff. You can read the prequel, I mean, the price reduction scripts and memorize them, write them out every day, but you won't be able to deliver them with conviction because behind it is you lack the belief. And remember what you said? We were on a call one time and you're like, hey, bro, I believe the reason why you guys buy into what they're saying is because you believe it.
Yeah.
When they're like, hey, I'm going to wait because the market's going to get better. Or, hey, I'm going to wait till interest rates come down. Or, hey, this, right? And you're like, well, you guys believe that.
Well, they were saying that like for a lot of times buyers were like, hey, I'm going to wait for the marketplace to crash. And a lot of times like this belief that you can time the market. And I don't believe that. I never believed that. Or at least very early on, I developed a belief against it because I saw other things. I noticed that people would say, hey, I'm going to wait for or I'm going to sell now because we're at the peak of the market. And they sold in 2015, bro, because Grant Cardone was saying, bro, that it was the peak of the market. And they believe that. And what I was like, what my thought was, as instead of I'm going to try to time the market, is like the long-term play is just to hold to as much of it as you can. And you make money in real estate a lot of times, like holding on to it for a long time. The other belief that I have is people would be like, well, I'm going to wait for the marketplace to crash. I'm like, I don't believe in waiting for the marketplace to crash. I believe in finding a good deal in any marketplace.
That's right.
And that's what I've done in any marketplace. I have found good deals that in any market, if you look back at the deals, be like, oh man, that's a good deal, Like,
well, and think about how that belief shapes so much of behavior. So, something that we've both done consistently all throughout our selling careers and like everything is I've invested continuously in all markets, up, down, sideways, whatever. But because underneath of it is a belief, to your point, I just try to find a good opportunity, but also it's time in the market, not time in the market that's actually the most valuable thing.
That's so good. Yeah.
But that little belief, think about how when played out over an extended period of time, how you end up in a completely different place.
Because you end up missing on a lot of opportunities when you're thinking about timing the market.
Heck yeah. Bro, Bruno, EXP Portugal's in the house. Let's go, Bruno. How you doing, brother?
I'll tell you another thing. Like very early on in my career, I had an agent or a guy that's like, look, I'm going to focus on paying off my property. And my belief was, no, I'm not going to focus on paying off my property. I'm going to focus on building a real estate portfolio. And then if I ever want to, after I build it, the portfolio that I want, and it provides the income that I want, then at that point, if I want to pay off or simplify or whatever, then I can go ahead and do that. And you look at how his belief played out versus my belief, he ended up with 1 or 2 properties and I ended up with 57.
That's right.
You know? And it was just a different belief system, basically. You know, it was like,
100%.
look, why would I pay off at that time? It was like, why would I pay off something at 4, 3, 2%? And not only that, but when it's cash flowing positively, why would I pay it off? Instead, I just focus on acquiring, basically.
Yeah. So let's, as we circle back, if we go to like clearing the room for time, like my belief underneath that is by helping them get clarity around the time they would like to do something, I'm actually serving them.
100%.
I'm not being pesky. I'm not being annoying. Like I'm actually serving them. By me, what we call digging or probing, and even those two words, they sound like invasive. I view that as professionalism. Like you can tell the quality and the competency of a professional based on the quality of questions that they ask.
Questions he asks.
I'm sure
Versus
you've
what
been,
he's saying.
Yeah, bro. I've been in the presence of people that just yap. I don't feel any competency. I'm like, okay. But when you're in the presence of a true professional who starts to ask you questions that you didn't even think about, immediately you're like, yeah, dude.
And he'll ask them in a way too, where it doesn't feel invasive. So that's a skill, asking questions in a way. So I may say, hey, Aaron, if this is not too personal for you, do you mind me asking, like, what's important about waiting another 6 months versus doing it now while the market is red hot?
Yeah. That's right. And those little bridges, because I remember we worked on that a lot, which was like, hey, my intention in asking isn't to be nosy. It's just to see if I could provide you with any more information that could be helpful or useful in some way. I'm curious.
I call it question softener. You're softening up the question a little bit.
That's right. Yeah.
And what I joke around is if you soften it up enough, you can ask anybody anything, because you softened it up. Like be like, hey, Aaron, if you don't mind me asking, like, and I'm kind of hoping like this is not too personal, and you may not want to share this on camera, but if you did, I think it would be really helpful for the viewers. How much money do you have in the bank?
That's right. That's right. You're trying to do. Hey, remember Ryan Secco? He asked me like on stage, he's like, "Yo, how much did you invest with Grant?" I was like, "Bro, you know what my son did?" And when he said that, Sebastian was like this.
but literally, you can ask anybody anything.
Yeah, anything you want.
If you practice and you learn how to. So like that's another skill. So like even in the puzzle, another skill that is going to be is just how to soften up questions. So if this is not too personal, if you don't mind me asking, like, hey, like my intention in asking this is this, but that's another skill right there that if you learn that skill, it'll help you have better conversations with people.
Yeah.
And it's funny. My wife would be like, dude, like you ask like so many questions to people. And she would tell me like, do you think it makes other people uncomfortable? And then he's like, how would you like it if somebody asked you that? I'm like, it wouldn't bother me whatsoever. Like if somebody asked me like, how much money do you have in the bank? I'd be like, yeah, this is what I have. Somebody tells me, hey, how much do you make? I'll be like, this is what I make. Like it doesn't bother me, but because that's my belief. My belief is that
it's okay to talk about money. It's not a big deal. Like it's fine.
And it was, I think I told you this one too. I was in Las Vegas and this guy goes, I'm heavily invested in crypto. And everybody around me was like, oh my God, oh my God, he's heavily invested into crypto. And to me, it's too vague for me. Like when somebody says I'm heavily invested into crypto. So I asked him, I said, hey bro, I hope this is not too personal, but like when you say you're heavily invested, like how much are we talking about? Like, are we talking about like 100,000, a million, 500,000, 5,000, 10,000? And he goes, $10,000. And I look at him and I look at the people around me and I'm like, bro, I have $10,000 involved in a Camaro, bro. That's a project car. And I don't say I'm heavily invested in Chevrolet,
Yeah. No.
you know, but it's that
Well, and it goes
ability.
back to belief, and that his belief is that's a lot.
Well, not only that, but like when you don't ask those questions for the people around me,
Yeah, you don't know.
the people around me were like, "Oh my god, like I should listen to what he says because he's heavily
Yeah.
invested into crypto." And I was just like, You have to." So even with sellers, I think a lot of people are scared to ask certain questions when people are being vague.
When they're being vague, and that's what leads to, in my opinion, what makes sales like not enjoyable, like leads to discontent, leads to frustration, is a lack of clarity.
By asking the right questions, you can almost predict the outcome.
Yeah, I know what's going to happen. That's exactly right.
It's like I'll ask a question. I'll be like, "This guy's not going to list with me. He's going to basically
Yeah.
go for sale
And
by
then
owner."
you know what's funny is people will say, because like we'll be on those role play calls and somebody will present something, and before I start to role play with them, you too, I'm like, all right, well, what's their motivation? You know, what's going on with the decision makers? Everybody on the same page? Is it an option for them to not sell? Is it an option for them to rent the property? Like, is it an option for them to hold on to it as a secondary home? Is there anybody else involved in the dynamic? Who's getting the money? Like, we just like, so I can be, and then once I have all of that data, then I know with a high degree of probability, not certainty, okay, here's how it's probably going to go.
Yeah. And
Right?
and you can determine if you want to invest your time or not at that point.
That's right. 100%. So this is why. So here's what's interesting. The combination of the two things that we're talking about is what leads to the results.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to sit in a room with everybody and you're going to show them, hey, here's a puzzle. And here's like a flow chart on how to ask these questions. And if they say this, do this, do this, do this. And then at the same time, simultaneously, I need all of you guys to understand. So now that is everybody clear on how to ask these questions? Yes. Does everybody so those who do not read are no different than those who can't. And those who know and don't do are no different than those who don't know. So can you say now you don't know anymore? And they'll be like, no. Great. Do you want me to tell you what's going to stop you from doing what I just shared with you?
What?
And they'll be like, yeah, what is it? I'm like, all right, well, let's do a little experiment. Okay. Because belief leads to behavior, which leads to results. Now, pre-qualification or digging for time, would we all agree that that's a behavior?
Yep.
Okay. So then what would be the beliefs that would stop us from doing it? Answer the following question. 1 being I strongly disagree, 10 being I strongly agree. I believe that asking and digging for clarity allows me to serve clients at the highest level. 1, I strongly disagree. 10 is I strongly agree. 5 is I'm neutral. I believe that when people give me a vague answer, if I ask it in a different way, it's actually a form of caring than it is, it's actually a form of caring and love. 1, I strongly agree or disagree. 10 is I strongly agree. 5 is I'm neutral. And what I believe will come to the surface for most people is most of their beliefs are in conflict with the behavior. And for that reason, it will never stick.
Yeah.
And then they'll go and they'll think like, oh, I need to go to another event. I need motivation. I need to do cold plunges. I need to do this. And you know what I'm saying?
Well, even when I got started, like I remember like I was under the belief that a fully renovated property would sell at the same price than a non-fully renovated property. That was a belief. So I went on listing appointments. I'm like, nobody's going to pay you $100,000 more because you have a pool. And then I would go on the appointment, I lose it. Somebody will list it $100,000 higher and then sell it. And then I was like, what happened? So I had to change my belief. And I was like, no, that other belief is not true. This is a true belief. And then I started, instead of like being nobody's going to pay that, I started bringing comps with pools instead of properties without a pools. And then that belief got better. And then I got rewarded because my belief started to change basically.
Mm-hmm. Based on data and feedback.
Yeah. I started making
you would have this thing where like me and you would have conversations and then maybe like I would transfer my belief to you. You would then go do the behavior that aligns with that belief, but then get direct feedback and be like, oh, this is accurate. And then you don't need my belief anymore. Now you believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were on a call with someone, and he said to me, he's like, "Look, dude, I'm having a hard time. Like, I'm going on like 10 appointments. I've only taken like one." And I was like, "Okay, two things. The first is that anything worth doing poorly is worth doing well before you can, or anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly before you can learn to do it well. I am glad that this is very hard, because if it wasn't, everybody would do it and the pay would drop dramatically. Number two, from like a kind of macro level, and like this kernel of like what I believe to be truth, is that when a seed is planted, it has two systems. One is gravitropic and one is phototropic. Gravitropic goes towards gravity. The phototropic system, which is the shoot system and the fruit system, grows towards the sun. What I know about gravity, and that system, when you're going down into the dirt, that's dark, dank, wet, muddy. And what's interesting is that everybody wants the shoot system and the fruit system without the root system. And what I told him is like, you might listen to Jose, but I was role playing with him at the beginning. He went on 100 listing presentations and took 20 listings. 100. Most people would quit. I told him, like, dude, I made $13,000 my first year selling real estate. Like, most people stop. I had 246 subscribers with 46 episodes of a podcast. Most people quit. So gravity, and I'm glad that is the way that nature works, is because what it's doing is it's working on you and your character. So that way, when you produce the outcome that you want, you can stay with it. Right. Yeah. So once you started to do that 100 deals a year, like, you haven't done anything less since.
No, not at all.
Right. Same with me. I did it, once I hit 100, did 110 years in a row. So the second thing I told him, though, is like, you have these wild, unrealistic expectations. I think media does this thing to us where we think everything's supposed to be like this. And just because you're putting in time and you're working and like, you think like, oh, you start to get entitled. Like, you think somebody owes you something. I'm like, bro, that's not what's happening. And if you look progression wise, first you had to learn how to set appointments. You weren't good at that before. You know what's happening now? You're going on them.
Yeah.
Yay, that's an improvement. Now that you've gone on them, I told him, I said, here's what I would suggest to you, okay? I bet you $10,000 right now. You come to a call with me and Jose on it. You tell us everything that happened from the time you set the appointment to the time you went on the appointment. I guarantee you we'll find 4 or 5 things that you messed up.
Well, it's funny because I had
one very big glaring one that once you adjust it, just like you did, the pool thing. And it's like, dang, man, I'm losing all this, but just an adjustment. And then bam, you start taking listings.
Yeah. Well, I had a call with them. I know who you're talking about. And he basically like, they basically asked him, one of the questions was on renovations to a property. And he's like, yeah, I have very competitive vendors and I could help you with that. I'm like, bro, did you show him any samples of like some of the projects that you've helped other clients manage? He's like, no. I'm like, so I walk him through it. And he's like, I'm like, is that any different than the way you presented? I'm like, I almost feel like it's very nonchalant, like your approach to it, like kind of like, yeah, like this, but you're not giving them any reason to stand out or anything like that. So
no, and I think what's happening too, and again, like, this is just how I see it, is there has to be substance.
Yeah.
There's a character thing that's happening. There's an internal development thing that's happening. And what I told him is any distortion from the truth creates a problem. And people who really love you and care about you, they won't let you distort a truth. They won't let you live a lie. So he was mentioning to me where like, you were like, you'd call him on a Saturday and be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, do you know why he's doing that? Because you're saying with your mouth that I'm working hard, bro. But he's pointing out to you
that you're not.
That's a lie. It's not true. Yeah?
It was a big time lie, bro. I would call him at random times, bro, just to see kind of like, hey, are you prospecting? And he's like, no, I'm doing this. I'm like, bro, what? I'm like, you must be wealthy already, you know?
Yeah. Or like, hey, man, like I was talking to somebody else, a completely different person, and we're having this conversation. He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, what time do you go to the office? He's like, 10. I was like, wow. And he's like, yeah, dude, I'm working hard. I'm grinding it out. I'm like, dude, somebody's lying to you because that's not true at all. And like, you're rich, bro. Are you? Because maybe you are. I don't know. Like going back to you said, hey, do you have a lot of money? Maybe you do. Maybe that allows you to sleep until 10. I don't know.
Good. All right. I'm going to have to get going to that event.
Yeah, you are. You're going to have to go deliver.
Yeah.
It's nice seeing you, bro. Hey, we're matching. We what's his name said? He's like, man, you guys both got a clean shaven look, bro. You know what I'm saying? But we appreciate you guys. Keep coming back. We give you the good stuff, not the BS. Most because they can't teach tactics. We can give you both. Elite Builders Coast to Coast. Peace.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir un verano en Nueva York.
Nueva York.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor,
¿Pero qué es?
solo tienes que vivir
Y este frío.
un verano en Nueva York.
Un ratito nada más. Ey, ey, ey. 4 de julio, Verde y Ulay. Ando con mi prima borracha Rulay. Los míos en el Bronx, saben la que hay. Con la nota en hoy, por Washington hoy. Willy Colón me dicen el malo. Ey, porque pasan los años y sigo dando palos. Vendiendo discos como cuadro Frida Kahlo. El perico es blanco, sí, el tusi rosita. No te confundas, no, mejor evita. Ey, un chat de cañita en casa de Toñita. Y PR se siente cerquita, sí. Con el campeonato nadie me lo quita.
Cerveza nuevo, number one de cerveza nuevo, ¿ok? Puerto Rico.
Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaetón y dembow, ey, con reggaetón y dembow, sí, con reggaetón y dembow. Como Bad Bunny va a ser rey del pop, ey, con reggaetón y dembow. Me siento como el lápiz en tope del dough. Cuando yo nací fue que nació el flow, de low a low, ping pong, flow pesado, big pong, con silenciador le robamos las gatas, J-Bone, ey. Yo estoy en la mía, no tengo adversario, no. Con los Yankees los me aguanzato. A correr que otra vez la sacamos al estadio.
Si te quieres divertir con encanto y con primor, solo tienes que vivir
Ya mismo nos vamos.
un verano en Nueva York.
Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover.